Let's look at the effects of changes in technology, how that affected the economy, how that affected American society in the 1980s, 90s, and in the 21st century. First off, economic productivity increased as improvements in digital communications enabled increased American participation in worldwide economic opportunities. This is globalization, and a big cause of it is better digital communication. More satellites enabling better global communication. Fiber optic cables like the one seen here and the internet really shrink the world. This is globalization. This is what Thomas Friedman's writing about in The World is Flat. The world feels smaller. It's easier to do business, make connections with people around the globe. Now, the ending of the Cold War certainly helps with that. The Iron Curtain comes down. That is a drop in some political and economic barriers that had existed for 50 years. That facilitates a lot more global interactions, especially in financial markets. The global financial markets today are extremely more connected than they were just 30 years ago. Now, this creates a problem, though, because financial troubles in one part of the world have a bigger impact on the rest of the world because of these interconnected global financial markets. But today, American investors invest all over the world, and people from all over the world invest in American business as well. Another thing facilitating this increase in globalization is the increase in what are called multinational corporations. Consumers and businesses have become connected across the planet. They've been connected to media from around the world. And as a result of that, we see an increase in multinational corporations. From 1970 to 2000, the number of multinational corporations, businesses with operations in more than one country, increases by 9 times in that 30-year span. And this is kind of how they work. They might have headquarters or operations in a large American city like Chicago. They may have manufacturing even still in some American cities, but they might also do some manufacturing overseas. There might be financing from those global financial markets. There might be insurance from those global markets, and they are trading around the world. This is not rare today. This is more common. For example, Walmart has over 6,000 stores outside of the United States. McDonald's has 13,000 restaurants in countries other than the U.S. Even in India, where many people don't eat beef, there's even McDonald's that are very popular. Now, it's not always for increased influence in foreign markets. It's not for additional sales that multinational corporations reach out into other parts of the world. It might also be for cheaper labor. For example, Nike, an American company, has over 700 factories, the majority of which are outside of the United States because they can find labor for lower costs outside of the United States. Next, technological innovations in computing, digital mobile technology, and the internet really transformed daily life. It increased access to information, and it led to new social behaviors and networks or connections that Americans made. So let's look at the effects that technology changes had on society. Let's start with computers. Let's start with the personal computer revolution. How we go from those giant computers that take up entire rooms and need a team of people running them, like we see in the background here, to those small laptops. Isn't it adorable? Look at that little iBook there, down there in the corner. How we go from computers being tools of the military, tools of a few select, very wealthy multinational corporations, to individual users. Well, a big reason for this is the microprocessor, invented in 1971. In 1971, this chip is released, and it's going to get smaller and smaller after that. And it's going to enable computers to get smaller and smaller. We'll go from this to something like this. Here we see Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak founders of Apple Computers. They're the guys who make a computer that can be usable by one person. You don't need a team of people. And in 1984, they released the Macintosh, pictured here. And this is the first real commercial PC success. This is the first personal computer that has real success in selling to consumers. Also, Bill Gates and Paul Allen, Allen's the taller one, Gates is the smaller, even nerdier looking one, create their company Microsoft, which was really going to focus on software, not the hardware, not the actual physical computer. They're going to focus on developing software for these personal computers that are taking over. And so they develop MS-DOS, they develop Windows, and by 2000, 9 out of every 10 personal computers ran Microsoft software. Let's move on to the internet. In the 1990s, those personal computers that we've already talked about are going to become even more important with the advent of the internet. Now, originally, the internet was a military project. It was used by the military. It was used by military contractors. It was used by academic and government scientists to share information, but it was not really accessible to the public, and they frankly wouldn't have wanted to. It was heavily text-based, like you see in the background here, not very user-friendly. The internet that we know, the World Wide Web, will come along in the 1990s. This is the graphics-based internet that we're used to. And it's going to almost overnight provide many Americans with access to millions of documents. It's going to have extreme popular and commercial appeal. Businesses are able to make money on the internet. Finally, let's look at smartphones. These are BlackBerries, probably the first smartphone, and sometimes they were nicknamed Crackberries because of the addictive nature of their use. People became addicted to answering emails on the go. Mobile technology really changes the nature of work for many Americans. It blurs the lines between home and office. On one hand, you can work from anywhere, but on the other hand, you might have to work from anywhere. So it's really, it creates some problems because when are you on vacation? When are you in the office? When are you at home with your family? When are you at work? Some businesses today, especially overseas, have policies against any of their employees sending emails after 6 p.m. They want there is value in having balance in your life and having some division between work and the rest of your life. And this mobile technology makes those divisions harder to maintain. Smartphones and the internet have also changed the way that we consume news. Now, this really starts with the first Gulf War and CNN's explosion and the 24-hour coverage they provided for that conflict. But people having screens in their pocket, updates through Twitter, allow or really accelerate this change to a 24-hour news cycle that we're currently experiencing. On the good side, the internet, smartphones, computers provide Americans with almost infinite, unimaginable access to information. Today, the average citizen now has the same access as a premier research scholar at one of the largest academic institutions in the country. We have access to weather. We have access to commerce. We have access to information about food. Heck, you can even order food, schedule any event. All of these are almost instantly accessible. But they come with some negative behaviors as well. Okay, I've got Instagram there in the background for a reason. They lead to addictions. They lead to bullying. They lead to depression, oftentimes as a result of comparison to things that people see online. It's important to remember, nobody ever posts a picture of themselves looking average or looking especially bad online. No, they post when they look great. They post the best meal that they've made. They post their cutest outfit. They don't post themselves in sweatpants and a t-shirt. the internet has led to a new type of the keeping up with the Joneses that was common in the 1950s. Remember, why did these people park their car in the driveway so prominently in the 1950s? They wanted their neighbors to see. They wanted their neighbors to see those fancy taillights on that new model car that they got, those beautiful white wall tires and those fancy hubcaps. And they wanted their neighbors to be jealous. It's the same reason many people post many things online today. It's not a new phenomenon, but it's enhanced or altered as a result of smartphones, the internet, and computers. And the social connections we make have been altered by this increase in technology, these technological changes that our society is experiencing. Media today is hyper-specialized. This is only a fraction of the television networks that you can access. If you are interested in something, there is a TV channel for it. Compare that to the fall lineup of my childhood. You either watched ABC, CBS, or NBC. There was nothing on Fox. You watched Perfect Strangers and Full House because you knew that's what your friends would be talking about the next day. You didn't want to be left out. How often today do you and 5 of your friends watch the same show every night? It's probably never. Internet and online access has really facilitated Americans' ability to join these mass membership organizations, to participate in nonprofit organizations, to even find support groups that are almost exclusively online. But there is less joining in America today. There is decline in public, in-person participation in organizations of all kinds. And this is a phenomenon that was identified in the 1990s by a sociologist named Robert Putnam in a book he titled Bowling Alone. And he used bowling as an example of all of these changes that we saw in America. The number of homes with televisions was increasing, and he didn't really even factor in the internet too much into this because he wrote this in the mid-90s, but the internet only accelerated some of these changes. And Americans were actually bowling more than ever in the mid-1990s. However, membership in bowling leagues had declined. And what that meant was the social conversations, the interactions, the connections, the networking, heck, even the quasi-political discussions that might take place during a bowling match, if you were part of a bowling league, were non-existent, were not taking place, at least in an in-person physical setting. Now, we saw a slight decline in religious membership. We see a decline in participation in parent-teacher organizations. We see a decline in political participation as well, up until about the 2008 election. And all of these things have been magnified by technological changes in our era.